Okay, good Tuesday morning, everyone. Due to COVID-19, this meeting is conducted under Wapaka County Resolution Number 8, 2020-2021. I will call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Vasquez,
Here.
Vasquez.
Here.
Okay, Pete, I can see you, so I'm marking you, but I cannot hear you.
Okay.
Boyer,
Here.
Craig, Mary,
Here.
Craig, Patricia,
Here.
Ellis. Ellis is absent. Fedowitz.
Here.
Golding,
Here.
Hardy,
Here.
Yeager,
Here.
Johnson,
Here.
Keppen,
Here.
Kussman, Lear.
Here.
He's there.
Yeah, husband's here.
Yeah.
Must be on mute.
Yep. Okay, just 1 second. I'm going to check. I see Jessica is telling me that she can hear everybody, so I'm going to make sure that, okay. Pete, can you take yourself off mute and just say something so I can?
Good morning, everybody.
All right, there we go. That was Jill's bad. Thank you, Jessica, for catching that. Okay. McClone,
Here.
Morak,
Here.
Muck,
Here.
Murphy, Gerald,
Here.
Murphy, Terry. Absent. Newman,
Here.
Nygaard,
Here.
Pullman,
Here.
Ritchie,
Here.
Rowan,
Here.
Spearings,
Here.
Wingelski,
Here.
Will,
Here.
Zog.
Here.
I show 25 members present and 2 are absent.
Thank you, Jill. Clerk Lodewagen, has the open meeting statement been fulfilled?
Yes, it has.
Thank you. As we stand for the silent meditation and followed by the pledge, please let us remember Bob Fleece and his family and his recent passing.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, if you would now, when you make a motion in a second, say that you are making the motion and your last name, please. We will need a motion to approve the agenda.
Who makes the motion?
Zog second.
McClone made the motion and Zog seconded the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried and approved. Also, the minutes of the March 16th, 2021 meeting.
What's approved?
Motion by Fedowitz for approval and Gerald Murphy's got a second. Any questions or comments on that? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion's carried and the minutes are approved. Let's go down to 7 resolutions. Resolution number 1, 2021-22. Comp Plan Amendment, Town of Farmington. Morning, Ryan.
Look at that. So this comprehensive plan amendment in the town of Farmington, they're looking to go from agriculture to commercial for that portion that you see on the map there. The reason for that is there's a business that's looking to relocate there. And in order to do that, they need to first go through this comp plan amendment.
Nygaard, move to approve.
Motion by Nygaard for approval
Murphy, second.
and a second by Gerald Murphy. Any questions or discussions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Resolution number 2, 2021-22, it's donation acceptance for the DHHS.
Johnson, moves to approve.
There's a motion by Mr. Johnson for approval
Zog, second.
and a second by Mr. Zog. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion's carried. Excuse me, resolution number 3, 2021-22, Work Zone Safety Awareness Week. Is there a motion for approval?
Paul makes the motion to
A
approve.
motion by Mr. McClone,
Second.
second by Mr. Nygaard. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Resolution 7D, resolution number 4, 2021-22. 2021 American Rescue Plan Fiscal Recovery Funds.
Craig moves to approve.
Motion by Supervisor Craig for approval. And a second by Mr. Wendowski. Any questions or discussion? Yes, Supervisor Boyer.
Could Diane explain it a little bit more than what I read? I'm going to defer to Heidi. I'm sorry?
I think that Heidi spoke to this at finance. Heidi addressed the finance committee about this, so I'll defer to her.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks, Heidi.
Good morning.
Morning.
Currently, the U.S. Treasury has not issued further guidance on the American Recovery, how do they call it? The rescue funds. Right now, they're in the process of determining the distribution of those funds. The bill itself addresses general areas of allowable uses of those funds. However, specific guidance is still pending with U.S. Treasury. So first and foremost, the county would accept those funds. We'd receive half of them within 60 days, which is from the passage of the bill, which was March 11th. So they're in the process of that piece right now. And then when further specific guidance comes from the U.S. Treasury on allowable uses of those funds, then we'll determine what that's going to look like moving forward. And then the second half, again, we wouldn't get till next year, which 1 year and 1 day after the first funds are dispersed. So that's what this resolution is doing, is accepting those funds at the forefront of it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Vice Chair Coleman.
Yeah, Heidi, do we have both of the accounts set up that we're going to be required to have as far as those monies go?
We have both the DUNS number and we are registered with SAM's entity, yes, SAMS.gov. And then, yeah. We have to have both of those to accept any federal dollars. So we do have both of those established already.
Do you have any idea what this money can be used for then?
There's 5 groupings in general to respond or to mitigate to the public health emergency itself with respect to the negative economic impacts, provide governmental services to the extent of the reduction in revenue, make necessary investments in water, sewer, or broadband. The state and local governments can transfer the funds to a private nonprofit organization or public benefit corporation involved in the transportation of passenger or cargo, or a special purpose unit, state of local government, and respond to workers performing essential work during the COVID-19 public health emergency, including providing grants to private entities who have, or grants, who have eligible employer, who are eligible employers that were providing that service. So it's very broad and a lot of different interpretations, which is why it's important that we wait for U.S. Treasury guidance in more detail as to what each of those categories mean.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, we're down to 8 ordinances. 8A, Code of Ordinance, Chapter 17, Public Fraud Assistance Ordinance. Repeal.
The repeal information is in your packet. If you want me to read it, I can. Otherwise, it was provided in the packet as to the reasoning for the appeal. And it has been brought forth before the Health and Human Service Board, as well as the Legislative, Judicial, Ethics, Safety, and Security Committee.
No, you don't need to read it. Is there a motion for approval? There's a motion by Supervisor Craig to approve.
Vasquez, second.
A second by Mr. Vasquez. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion's carried. Thank you. B, 2021-725, amendment to Chapter 34, petition number Z-006-21, Town of Farmington, BCQ Pitt LLC for a zoning map amendment from AWT district to a RC-G district on approximately 8 acres.
So this is a companion rezone to the comp plan that we just approved just a minute ago. So what they're doing is they're going from that agricultural district to the rural commercial general district to allow for that their business.
There's a motion by Supervisor Gerald Murphy for approval.
Second by Nygaard.
A second by Mr. Nygaard. Questions? Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion is carried. And is approved. Item C, 2021-726. Amendment to Chapter 34, petition number Z-007-21, Town of Helvetia, Carrie R. and Shelley Litke for a zoning map amendment from RR district to AWT district on approximately 14.3 acres.
So the Lutkes are looking at starting a business on this property as well. The property that they're looking at, or the business they're looking at starting is required to be within an agricultural district or AWT, which is the district that we're being rezoning into. Further, they also require a conditional use, which they've already conditionally received from the Planning and Zoning Committee.
There's a motion by Supervisor Johnson and a second by Supervisor Lair. Any questions or discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Item D, 2021-727, amendment to Chapter 34, petition number Z-008-21, Town of Lebanon, Donald Weggie for a zoning map amendment from AR district to RR-O district on approximately 2.5 acres.
So the Wiggies are looking at consolidating their structures or putting their structures on the one parcel. This is in farm preservation, so it's required that they go to the rural residential overlay district, and they will be using one development right to create this lot.
Have a motion for approval, do we?
Nygaard, move to approve.
Supervisor Nygaard made a motion for approval,
Yagowski seconds.
and Waliowski made a second. Any question or discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion is carried. 8E, 2021-728, amendment to chapter 34, petition number Z-009-21. Town of Scandinavia, Charles R. and Mary H. Barden, JTIR and only TR for a zoning map amendment from PVRF district to RR-O district on approximately 2.5 acres.
This petition is very similar to the previous one. The Bardens are looking at separating out their structures from the remaining property. Again, this is also within farm preservation, so they are going to the rural residential overlay district. And this is taking up one development right to create this lot.
We have a motion for approval.
Awesome. The motion.
Fedorowicz made a motion for approval.
Buck seconds it.
Muck made a motion for, I may second the motion. Any question or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Reports. Today we have District Attorney Veronica Isherwood here for her report, and here she comes.
Far corner of the room.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I've met almost everybody, but not completely everybody. My name's Veronica Isherwood. To defendants, I'm Miss Isherwood. In court, I'm Veronica. And to everyone else, I'm Ronnie. So presuming nobody here is a defendant. So in 2020, we were like the extension office as far as the pandemic. The attorneys in my office are state employees, and then the support staff and victim witness staff are county employees. So the county employees followed whatever the board directed as far as employees coming to work, working remotely. And then we state employees were under an order to work from home unless we couldn't, a particular case. It's been a very interesting year in the court system. There have not been any jury trials. And many people in jail, we become very creative in settling cases, which is always good. Starting in May, there's a jury trial every week. So we'll be picking up the slack and trying to get the people who are in custody before having their juries. Watching the big jury that's going on right now in Minnesota, it's very interesting to see all the plastic barriers they had, when people wear masks, when they don't wear masks, and actually gave me a lot of ideas on what we can do. The court staff and we in the courtroom all the time feel safe in there, but we have no idea what the jury pool will feel like when they come in, or if they'll feel safe. So we're working on it. Our office has been open every day of the pandemic. We've had staff in place, and there were about 2 weeks around Christmas that we didn't open our doors when the numbers were really high. But other than that, we've been providing a service throughout this last year. One of our biggest challenges that my office is facing, along with all the law enforcement agency, of course, is illegal drugs. And I would say right now that methamphetamine is the worst enemy. We're dealing with cocaine, fentanyl, heroin, and our drug court. I'm actively involved in drug court, and that's really been struggling in the last year. There's been a lot of relapses, a lot of extra treatment programs that have been missing because inpatient treatment programs had such strict guidelines for maintaining social distancing that they weren't available. We've certainly found in the last year that trying to do an AA meeting virtually is not the same as being in person. People were struggling with their own emotional issues. They weren't having any of the human support that comes in from having drug court in person and therapy in person. Our therapist, Wade Rasmussen, would say to do a group meeting like this, like on Zoom, and a lot of the people didn't have Zoom capability, so they're just a phone number on the screen. You can't meet their needs. So drug court is back in person now. Hopefully we will have more access to more AA meetings and treatment for them, and things will get better. Wapaka County does have a drug endangered child protocol that was developed a couple of years ago. And law enforcement knows that when they go into a home where there's drugs, if there's children present, they reach out to DHS, who, as part of this protocol, they respond. They're testing children in the home with hair follicle tests. And it's so sad how many of these babies come up with methamphetamine in their system just because they were in the home with these parents. And so we have been regularly charging child neglect on those cases, and they get put on probation with parenting classes. DHS may have to do a CHIPS petition, but it's a really important protocol, and I'm really pleased with how it's going. I think eventually it will make a difference for families. We've also had an increase in suicides in our county and young people, and it's just heartbreaking. And you might wonder why the district attorney is involved in suicides, but I try to be involved in everything that law enforcement is involved in. And some suicides are attempted suicides, and we don't charge them, but we want to make sure that they get services. And I've been talking to some officers about starting a suicide task force to try to address the needs in the community. We don't always hear, or you don't always hear, when a young person dies that it was suicide. But I think sometimes by the wording in the obituary, you guess if it was a suicide. The pandemic has just taken a toll on emotional health of everybody, and certainly the children. So I hope that we get that task force up and running. The other proactive group that started before the pandemic, and now we need to get it going again, was a group to address how many wrong way drivers there are in our county. On Highway 10, it's every time I hear of one of those, my heart just breaks. Kevin Studinsky, who is a lieutenant at the Sheriff's Department, and I have talked about a campaign, and it's called Stay Right at Night. And I don't know if you've heard of it, but most wrong way drivers think they're on a 2-lane road. So they're on the right side or driving toward you, and you are safer at night if you are driving in the right lane, because even if there's a wrong way driver, you're less likely to be right in their path. So we're hoping that could be something just to bring it to people's attention that a wrong way driver is always a possibility. And it's not always impaired drivers. Sometimes it's fatigued drivers or just confused. I've almost gone the wrong way, not in Wapaka County, but you get in a city where you don't know how the streets are laid out. So since I've been district attorney, we have charged out 63 sexual assault cases. One of our other active groups is SART, which is the Sexual Assault Response Team. They meet monthly. They've met in a Zoom format for the last year. But they're really trying to have a response to sexual assault reports that can be community-wide, that can involve law enforcement and DHS and my office and advocates. And we've had a significant increase. I don't think the number of reports has gone up, but the number of actual charges has gone up. And I think that's important. I don't know if you folks remember Marcy's Law. That was on the ballot probably a year and a half or 2 years ago now. That went into effect, and frankly, it's been a nightmare. What the resolution said on the ballot, I think it said something like, we want victims to be treated with respect, and all that is good. The problem is we were treating them with respect before. We were treating them respecting their privacy. Law enforcement was, my office was. But Marcy's Law added all these regulations to us, but with no descriptions on how they were supposed to be enacted. And so there's a lot of litigation, and actually there's a Wapaka County case right now in front of the Supreme Court to clarify what rights victims have, if they can intervene in a case, if they can talk, their attorneys can talk in court and file their own motions. The defendant in that case lost his appeal, and he has now appealed to the Supreme Court. And there's a lot of different groups that are interested in Marcy's Law. So Wapaka County will be making the law in this area. It's increased our workload. It's increased the threats that if we violate a victim's right, that will be taken to court. And of course, there's no guidance, there's no funds, there's nothing. And in fact, our victim witness program hit an all-time low for reimbursement this year, and that was at 33%. It's generally been around 55%, 60%. So we were quite shocked when it came in at 33% the last half of 2020. There is a criminal justice coalition at the legislature that is asking that that be mandated at 75%. And of course, all the DAs around the state are in favor of that. So hopefully that will go up. As far as our caseload in 2020, we had 1,570 cases that we charged out. And it took us an average of 10.7 days to charge. Now, in 2016, I took over as DA the beginning of 2017. We had an average of 49 days to charge those cases. So I feel good about the increase. It has gotten better every year. And in 2020, it was just under 11 days. I don't know if you are aware, but in 2020, my office charged out 10 homicides or attempted homicide cases. Sometimes we get jaded in our office, in my profession, because all we see is the worst of what's out there in the county. And that's not a reflection of the county as a whole. But I think it is a reflection of my office taking a stand and saying, we're going to charge these out. We're going to charge them out quickly. When they happen, the charges are usually within a week. And I think that's important for community safety. 3 of those charges came from drug overdoses, where we charged the person that is alleged to have provided the drugs. 1 case was a stabbing. 3 of the cases involved defendants who were charged with shooting somebody. Luckily, in one of the cases, the victim lived, but she was shot in the head and she has a traumatic brain injury that she'll never recover from completely. 2 were car crashes where through the reconstruction, we found the driver to be at fault. And 1 was a domestic case where his girlfriend was pregnant and he tried to abort the pregnancy by beating her. So little old Wapaka County, it's frightening what truly happens here. As a comparison, between 2013 and 2016, there were only 4 homicide cases charged out in this county. And it's not that there weren't deaths, but those were the only ones that were actually charged in court. So at the end of the year, we had 454 open felonies that have been unresolved, 315 misdemeanors. And we have gotten our uncharged cases down from when I took over, there were over 1,000 cases just waiting to be charged to under 50 at the end of 2020. So I'm quite proud of the progress we've made. I'm one of the few counties, or we are one of the few counties in the state that have the same assistant district attorneys for the last 5 years. And that's unheard of. If you go to Portage County, they have the record for the most assistant district attorneys in that same period, and they even surpassed Milwaukee. So I think that's really part of our success, is that people like working in Wapaka County. The defense attorneys like coming here. My assistants like working here. There's a good relationship between the judiciary, other offices, and that's something Wapaka County can be proud of. So are there any questions about my office?
Questions? For our district attorney Isherwood. I have one. When did you start here? Was it 4 years ago, did you say?
2014, I started, and then I was elected DA and took office January of 2017.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was in a unique situation when I started. I got to hire, there was a complete turnover in attorneys. So I got to hire staff, and I didn't have any, I gotta be careful how I say that. I just got to hire staff. I'll just put it that way. And so we work well together. It's been very strange only being in contact with each other by Zoom for the last year, but the state has put programs on our computers and everything to support that effort. And when the internet works, it's awesome.
I'd heard when you took office that you had such a stack of pile of work in front of you, they couldn't even see you being at the desk.
Yeah, there were over 1,074 uncharged cases, but I think the best thing we've done is we've gone paperless. So instead of 1,000 cases, everything is on our computer. And who knew there was going to be a pandemic? But if we hadn't done that in this pandemic, I don't know what we would have done. So it just completely lent itself to being virtual.
Supervisor Craig has a question.
Thank you. You talked about Zoom, and this is probably under the circuit courts, but tell me about if someone comes in front of the judge, is the judge on Zoom? Are the people on Zoom? Are you on Zoom? And can the public, because typically you could go into anything that the judge is doing other than children. Is that still available for the public or not?
Well, it has to be, or the case isn't going forward legally, and that can be an appellate issue. They set up Zoom, and many of the defendants call in. My biggest issue with Zoom is for the cases that started in 2020 and ended in 2020, those people never set foot in a courtroom. Do they really feel like they're under a court order? Unless they went to jail, I don't think so. So there'd be a picture. The judge was always in the courtroom. And then the defense attorney would be in a window and I would be in a window and the defendant would be in a window. And they could do a breakout room. So the judge could put the defense attorney and his client in a separate room where they could talk and they would come back in. Now, these were open hearings, so the courtrooms were always open. People complained they would try to Zoom in and then they weren't let in from the waiting room. I voiced my concerns. I can't see the waiting room, so I don't know when it happens. But occasionally we'd have a victim who was sitting in the waiting room and they were just identified by a phone number and they weren't let in. So we would have to do a hearing over so that their victim rights would be taken care of. I don't think they ever went to the YouTube channel. That's what many of the counties did. It was broadcast by YouTube. And then anybody could Zoom in it or YouTube in and watch it at any time. I don't believe we did that. We have quite a range of computer ability, I would say, between the whole third floor. And while we're all learning, there was a learning curve.
Thank you.
You bet.
As far as the individuals that have gone through the drug rehabilitation program through the court system, have you got much of a background as far as how many of them have successfully gone through this and haven't repeat offended? Or how many of these have you seen come back through the court system once again?
Well, I know of 3 that came back through. I don't know, Fred, do you have the number of our graduates?
I was at the drug court last Wednesday. I'm gonna go this Wednesday too, and administrator is gonna give me a report and statistics for our next legislative judicial meeting. And I'll have the same report for the next county board meeting.
There's quite a few graduates and those are all lives saved. I run into one of our graduates when on the rare occasion I get to go to Grazzi's and it just, her life was saved. I mean, she was going down a very bad path. And sometimes we'll hear about a relapse and our drug court still reaches out to those people. And our coordinator, Aaron Holt, is doing a wonderful job and he will invite them back to the alumni group and they'll come back, and where they don't have new charges and they don't come back to the formal drug court program, you know, they're still wrapped up with us and we follow them and care for them.
Also on that, you talked about individuals that overdose and then you go back after the individual that sold them the drugs. Do you ever go any farther than that for the one that was selling it to that individual and try and broaden this out so we can take more individuals out of the population?
The drug officers, so the county has drug officers, Wapaka and New London all have drug officers. There's a Central Wisconsin Task Force. And then DOJ is involved too in certain cases. And that's always the goal. When we go up to the higher levels, they usually end up getting charged in federal court. Federal has sentencing structures that I've sat down with a federal prosecutor and I could charge this and they'll probably get 18 months in prison and 18 months extended. They take it federally and they get 10 years. So when we get to the bigger ones, they usually go the federal system. There have been a few that I have charged, and then we kind of put them in a holding pattern until the federal system is ready to take in the whole group. So we get them off the street and I charge them on the state side, but once the federal does their indictment, then I dismiss my charges and let them go through that way. So that's where the bigger ones, we don't see them here. Okay. And one of my concerns, this is we don't want to bring somebody and make a relationship with Wapaka County where their only relationship before was they were passing through. This happens with kids at Rawhide. They turn 17, they get in a fight, and we'll get a referral for a disorderly conduct. Well, if I charge that 17-year-old with disorderly conduct, at the end, you know, they go home to Milwaukee or Madison. They have to keep coming back here for court. And so this person who has no relationship with Wapaka County, all of a sudden we build a relationship, so they might stay here or, so I really try to avoid that at all costs. And, you know, we deal with what we have to, but we don't want to make this, we don't want to make it a place where they have to come. And so the bigger drug dealers, we want them to be taken care of in Madison or Milwaukee and not coming here to court on a regular basis, because generally speaking, if that's their occupation, they're going to come here and commit some crimes while they're here.
When there is an individual death from drugs and you sentence the individual that sold them the drugs, what is is there kind of an average sentence that they get? Is it 10 years, 30 years?
Well, that's one of our frustrations. There was one in Outagamie County that got 17 years. We had one here that got 18 months. So it's all over the board. There isn't any, I can't find any rhyme or reason. I wish there was. There are a lot of good things about the federal system where you do this, this is your chart, this is what you're going to get. It depends on what's argued. Right now, we get a lot of PSIs, which is a pre-sentence investigation. And Probation and Parole Office does that. But they're under such orders to keep people out of prison that it's ridiculous. So the homicide with the stabbing, they recommended 12 months probation, no jail. Yeah, he was fighting, he stabbed someone and he killed them. 12 months probation. That's ridiculous. I mean, that's what a life is worth. And we're not valuing the life, but the victims left that, you know, his mother, his brother, his son was too upset to come. They left that hearing completely devastated. But that's what we're left with. So we don't ask for pre-sentence this very often anymore, because they just, you know, they have to, it goes up the line for approval and they just won't approve high sentences.
I have a question. I had heard that when you first started here, you were appearing at crime scenes if it's 3 a.m. or somebody threw a body out of this car and was killed. How do you do that still? That's quite time consuming.
If I get called, I go out.
Okay.
Depending on what it is. I won't done a suicide, but if there was a question whether it was a suicide, I've sat in my car with my computer and typed the search warrant so that the officers can do what they need to do. And the one I didn't was the shooting here in the city of Wapaka. And that was on a Monday night, and Monday morning, my husband tested positive for COVID. So I was on the phone with officers all night, but I didn't, and I'm a survivor. I tested positive a week later. And so we tried so hard to be good. And then he was hauling corn to the mill and all the farmers were in the little shed to keep warm while the trucks were unloading. So that's how it spreads. But yeah, so that's the only one that I got called that I didn't go out. But if I have to describe the scene to a jury, there's nothing like being there. You can look at all the pictures you want, and that's why some officers just describe things so well and some not so well, but that's why we put them on the stand to talk about it, because they were there and they saw it.
Okay, well, thank you so very much.
You
Very
bet.
interesting.
Anytime you have questions, let me know or stop in. I know I see Fred at drug court, but there's some pretty interesting cases out there. And it's a real eye opener of what's really going on.
We decided to do this starting this year, is to have more reports from our professional offices such as yours for the new supervisors and us old supervisors, because updates for us are good.
Yep.
So thank you so much.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, Jessica Beckendorf, I think you're up.
I am, and this is going to take quite a turn from the last conversation. But I will reiterate, and you've
Could you
probably.
speak a little louder, please?
Oh, of course. Is this better?
Yeah.
I'm gonna work on it. I've got you up as the highest I can get you, Jessica.
Okay. I can also check my mic settings to see if there's a way to boost that a little bit. Otherwise, if this is good enough, I'm talking pretty loud here at my house. Is it helping?
No.
No.
Oh, all right. Let me check something here. Here we go. It won't let me turn my mic up. I see an ability to do it, but it won't let me do it.
Well, let me see if I can allow you something.
Okay.
I make you a co-host.
All right. I can also try switching mics. Now I might be able to turn my volume up here. We'll do that and we'll give that a try, and otherwise I will yell.
Maybe when she returns, she can come at us.
Oh, well, now it's turned all the way up.
Yeah, we're still not really hearing you very well, Jessica. I'm sorry, I'm not sure. I made you a co-host. If there's something that you can see on your side that I'm doing incorrectly, I have my volume all the way up.
You're doing everything right. My apologies. I haven't ever had this problem yet. So let's see if I can just do one more thing, and if not, I will yell as loud as I can.
Why don't you just postpone it to another time?
Is this any better?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. Okay, so I will reiterate, as I'm sure you've heard from others from my office throughout the year, that we have also been able to continue all of our operations. There's with the exception that the Leadership Wapaka County program was canceled for last year, in part because, or actually not just in part, but primarily because of the nature of the program. We meet in person once a month at various locations. And there were a couple things going on there where some of the locations were not allowing us to book anyway. And then on top of that, the whole uncertainty of getting everyone together. So we did end up canceling that program for the year, but we are gearing up to get started with it again. And so you'll hear more about that coming up. In the meantime, some other programs have just gone ahead full steam. One of the programs that isn't mentioned here in our newsletter, because it's still pretty new, is a nonprofit capacity building program where I intend to start implementing this in Wapaka County soon, but working with the nonprofits to help them build capacity so that they can do the best that they can with the populations that they serve in the county. So I've been working on developing that program in the background, and now we'll be implementing it soon. So that's not in the newsletter that we gave you because I haven't brought it to Wapaka County yet. But I did have some news to report on the other program I've been working on in the background, or one of the other programs, which is this bilingual leadership development program. It does not have an exciting name yet. We are working on that. We're working on trying to get a name for it because Spanish language leadership program or bilingual leadership program just doesn't have a good ring to it. So as we work on that, though, we have been developing the program, and this program is made up of some folks from Wapaka County, from our Building Bridges program that has been around for several years, and also some folks from Latinos Unidos in Fond du Lac County, some people from Milwaukee County and Greene County. And the reason we decided to put this partnership together is that putting together a whole leadership development program bilingually is a lot of work. And it's good work. It needs to be done. And also it's a lot of work for one person. And we realized that if we were to team up, we would be able to accomplish this a lot better. And sure enough, the deeper and deeper we got with it, the more we realized that there was an even bigger need than we thought. So what I guess the most exciting things to report on this is that our organization, Extension, has realized that this program has the potential to be something really important for really even across the state. And so we've had some small amounts of funding made available to us. In addition to that, we were granted $15,000 for our innovation fund, as they recognize this as an innovative program. So we're working on using that money to continue to enhance the program and get it going. We're looking at implementing this in the fall, and we'll only be implementing it at first in Waupaca, Milwaukee, Fond du Lac, and Greene counties, where we've had the support from the co-construction team. So that's been a really exciting development. And then just moving on, the teen leadership camp, really, it featured some pretty cool things. It featured a virtual escape room. I did some of those just for fun with some friends over the winter. And they really do highlight skills like teamwork, especially if they're planned in an educational way, which I know Penny and her colleagues did. So the virtual escape room highlighted some skills like teamwork. And then it also featured a team building educational session where they have the chance to create a definition of what team building means and then plan a program around that. So they had a chance to implement some of those skills as well. And it really had some awesome results. It's actually even been requested by educators in other states after it was shared on a national resource sharing site. So that's a good testament. Besides the people who attended the program saying that they loved it, it's a good testament to how useful this program is. So that one. And then there was a program called Keep Calm and Cook On. So this was developed by FoodWise coordinators in our area, extension area region. So that would be Waupaca County, Outagamie, Winnebago, and Calumet County. And it was a virtual nutrition education opportunity for SNAP eligible families that highlighted caregiver role modeling, good eating habits, safe and appropriate tasks for children in the kitchen, tips on saving time and money, and helping kids enjoy more fruits and vegetables. And that program had, I think it was 6 whole families participate all throughout the program, but there were additional families that participated, but not throughout the whole program. So that was something that was pretty well received as well. So then lastly, the Waupaca County Hunger Network. So this is a brand new sort of coalition. After hearing partners and leaders express some similar needs as it related to the families and individuals that they work with, so that would be limited resource families and individuals, FoodWise decided that it would be a good idea to create a space where some ideas can be shared and developed. So since everyone was experiencing the same kinds of issues and needs and barriers, they just thought getting everyone together to talk about that and share some ideas around how they can get around the issues would be a really good idea. And so that meets every second Wednesday from 2:30 to 4. And people are welcome. If you're interested, you're welcome to join these meetings. And you could just contact Christy Gabrowska. So that's my really quick report. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Questions for Jessica?
And I apologize, Jessica, for the volume issue. It might be something in the room that I just don't know about yet.
No worries at all.
Thank you very much, Jessica.
Thank you.
So let us take a 6-minute break, please.
Supervisors, if you could please take your seats, we'll be starting the meeting. We are off, we're on Zoom and we're live now.
He was overly.
Oh, yeah.
Things were either.
Well, I'd be happy to get copies. I can get you like 4 or 5 copies. That way you can get it back.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Don't come to the home and then around, but.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Hope we all feel better. Oh, I forgot to get a break. Welcome, Casey. 2020 Highway Department Financial Review by Mr. Beiersdorf is going to be eye-opening. So welcome, Casey.
Thank you, Chair. Some of you have already seen this presentation, whether it was in the Finance Committee or you were on our Highway Committee. So bear with us if you've seen it before, but it is interesting. And once you go over it multiple times, I think it really starts to set in more, even for a highway commissioner who hasn't looked at it through this perspective before. So the same presentation I've practiced now 2 or 3 times, and I've been asked to give it at the Summer Road School in Wisconsin Dells to all of the highway commissioners in the state of Wisconsin. So that's why it's dated on here June 8th, if you're wondering why. So we'll get started. A lot of what we've done in the past is reference this green financial book, okay? So you may or may not have had it. Most of you probably have it digitally. And throughout today, I'm going to reference different pages in it. You don't have to try to keep up with me, but just know that what I'm referencing, you already have digitally. Okay, so again, I'm Casey, and then helping me with this presentation is our accountant office manager, Chris Carlin. And what we're going to talk about is how the highway department functions financially. What's our backbone of how we operate? And it's essentially broken into 2 different functions. On your left, you're going to see the Highway Operations Fund. And I like walking, so I'm going to steal this from here. Over on the left, we have the Highway Operations Fund, which has all these different cost pools, which we're going to talk about on the left and how it affects our overall checkbook. And then on the right, you have our Transportation Services Fund, which is also different cost pools, but that's more of when you approve the budget for the next year and on what we're allowed to spend for capital projects, road projects, equipment purchases at the Highway Committee level. So a lot of it is our main checkbook. And then over to the right is Transportation Services Fund. So I'm going to reference them a lot throughout this slideshow. Okay, so the next slide I have is right dead center is our software that we have at the County Highway Department. It's called CHEMS. CHEMS is the software program that's utilized by my account office manager, our accountants, our parts and shipping receiving person. This is our main software. It stands for the County Highway Equipment Maintenance System. It's a free software program provided from the Wisconsin DOT to the counties. Many of them elect to use it. And what it does is it functions and it takes in a lot of information from another software program called RT Vision. So when employees come in at the end of the day and they input their hours worked on a project or put how much time a piece of equipment has been used on a project, they're using the RT Vision software program. And that once it's approved at the office manager level, then it gets put into CHEMS. Same thing goes with our Fuel Master system. When you see our employees fueling up at the pump, it logs who the employee was, how many gallons of diesel or unleaded fuel were used, what piece of equipment went into, and then it sends the information into CHEMS, which is gathering all this data from our systems. The next software program is Advanced Weighing System. That's when our trucks go across the scales, whether it's at our Wapaka facility or our outlying facilities. It's anything that we weigh, whether it's salt during the winter, gravel, salt sand for winter, anything that they weigh in the truck knows which truck it went into, which employee used it and which project it went to. And then that software program sends it to CHEMS. Other information that goes into chems is our inventory of all of our repair parts, our tires, batteries, everything that we use to maintain our facilities, including culverts and road building material is all put into chems. And then over on the right, if we have vendor charges, so we buy asphalt from, I'm going to use Northeast Asphalt, and then they send us an invoice or a bill for a specific project. That all goes through and into chems. And then what does chems do for us? It spits out a product. So if we want to send our invoices or our bills to the towns or other county departments, chems helps us create that because it's gathered all this info. We use it multiple times throughout the year to monitor construction projects budgets where we sit financially. It helps us with payroll exporting, and it also helps generate an equipment preventive maintenance program. And so our fleet manager knows when oils need to be changed based off of the amount of fuel that got put in the piece of equipment and so forth. Another thing that then happens from it is all this information gets sent over to the finance office, and it gets put into a program called Logos. And so we have the option at Highway Department to see the Logos financial statements, but Heidi and her staff are able to go into Logos and see as often as it's been put into Logos, how the Highway Department's financials are doing. So that's the software program. Next. So next we're going to talk about cost pools. Remember way on the left, all of these different cost pools make up our highway operations, and we're going to go into them one by one. So all this slide is showing is how we did overall in each individual cost pool, but how it affected our bottom line. Throughout the year of 2020, which what this report is reflecting on, there's a few things that we can take from it. Our beginning unassigned fund balance was roughly 3.9 million. We ended the year at 2.9 million. So there was a reduction in our checkbook, essentially, of right around $932,000. We're going to find out why. So we built the new highway shop. Everyone's aware that we have one here in Wapaka, which is fabulous. We love it, but it comes with a cost. And so them costs have to get broken down and accounted for individually on separate cost pools. Think of it that everything, now this is an aerial photograph of our Wapaka facility, everything inside our fence has to be accounted for. It has a cost, such as this red area for maintenance. Well, we have mechanics, we have shop tools, we have the space allocated for repairing our equipment. A lot of the sheriff's department, that has a lot of costs. The big blue garages here have to store our equipment. And inside of them garages are all the equipment that we purchased. It costs money to have those garages, to heat them, and to pay for the equipment. The office area has administrative staff, so them costs have to be accounted for, to include my wages, my vehicle. We'll talk more about that. Our fuel island, way down here at the bottom, we have fuel costs. So that's a whole nother cost pool. We have salt sheds way up at the top. So all of everything that we essentially have at the highway department, not only in Wapaka, but at our Larrabee shop, our Helvetia shop, and our New London shop has costs. And the only way that we can generate those revenues is by everything that's outside of the fence. All right, next let's talk about buildings and grounds. So when you have a new facility in our enterprise fund, we have to account for the depreciation of our new shop. Our new shop was what, $23 million roughly, and it has a life expectancy according to the DOT standard of 40 years. The 40 years, after 40 years, if we don't invest anything more in this facility, it should be depreciated out. But for the next 40 years, we have to account for that value of that building going down, down, down. And we count for it on our books. And so the depreciation of our buildings and grounds account has to get allocated out to all of these different things we talked about inside the fence, them small cost pools, such as a highway administration office, our shop operations, fuel handling, equipment storage, our bituminous accounts, which is holding brine, holding asphalt in our patching bins. And then new to Wapaka County, at least to our operations, is accounting for the cost of having brine or saltwater making capabilities that we spray typically during the winter. And them costs are all broken out based on the square footage of each individual area. So in your book, and I don't see many people with the book, but here is what you would see on your digital spreadsheet of our buildings and grounds accounts. We had a cost of $952,000 in our buildings and grounds accounts for the year 2020. And then we split them up amongst all these different cost pools. We're going to show how we generate revenue to account for those costs.
The book is electronic on the more section, just so you know.
Okay.
On the iPad.
You following along on the iPad? Because I can reference the page to look at.
Yeah, there's two different things. They have the PowerPoint and the book, so I don't know what they have up, but
Okay.
either one is available on the more section.
So buildings and grounds was our biggest, it was our biggest new thing to try to account for the expenses, because we didn't have a new facility prior to that. So buildings and grounds is on page 11. And we have to allocate those costs of having buildings and grounds. And our biggest one right on top is the depreciation of a new facility. The next slide just shows like an average of where we were at for our buildings and grounds costs. You can kind of see that from 2019 to 2020, our buildings and grounds costs went up roughly $500,000 or $469,000. That's a lot of expenses to account for it by using our operations to generate that revenue. We don't account for all of these costs ourselves. The Wisconsin Department of Transportation does help us recover about a third of what we do. So they help reimburse us for some of these expenses. And it's all relative to being available for snow plowing. They want a building over their truck to go out and plow snow. They help recover the costs of some of our salt sheds. They also help pay for some of the costs of our employees, more of our supervisors, or those for projects that we worked on with the DOT. So the next cost pool we're going to talk about breaking down buildings and grounds is administration. So administration includes the activities that support other major performance areas, which include budgeting, personnel, data. We have my wages, Chris's wages, one of our accountants, Sue, our office specialists that meets and greets you at the door. There's a lot of administration costs to include. A portion of that is the buildings and grounds allocation of the depreciation of the new facility. So we have to account for the admin area depreciating as well. How do we recover our administration costs? We recover it by putting an admin rate on our invoices out to our customers. And if you can recall, in the year 2020, there wasn't a whole lot of snow that was plowed. And so we had a lot less invoices that went out to towns, the DOT, for us to tack on a lot of these rates to recover our costs. And so I've told this multiple times, if you're in the business of plowing snow, snow is good. We are receiving a lot of requests just lately from towns that really want us to start plowing snow for them because they're finding that their private contractors can't afford to have a person and a piece of equipment on staff and don't get hired to plow snow. So we're at a macro level of that, being that we plow with 20 different trucks in different townships. Anyway, our administration rate averaged was 4.5%. Now it's at 4.56%. Also tacked on to administration costs are the costs of having radios in our vehicles. The DOT does help us reimburse for, I think, 15 different trucks, because there's radios specifically out for plowing on the state sections. We have administrative costs in liability insurance. A portion of it is patrol supervision. A little bit is to the LRIP program, which is state grants. Over on the right is just a tally of all the different extra costs. In your digital book, your financial statement, you're going to see a lot of this reoccurring. Typically, it's on page 12 or page 13, and then another one finalizes on page 14. So once we get to the end of our administration costs, which include even our local bridge aids, we hold a certain portion of our administration expenses are allocated out to the 50/50 local bridge program. I'm sorry, culvert pipes that are 36 inches in diameter that are or larger. We administer that program for those towns. A 5-year average of where we were at in from 2016 to 2020, which is a reflection of the department since I've been here. The average was $142,000. We under recovered. In 2020, we under recovered about $99,000 of our administration. Another cost pool is fuel handling. And so that's the costs of having fuel available for our fleet, for those that help us recover those costs, which is typically the New London School District. They buy a lot of fuel. So it's the costs associated with fuel handling, such as the delivery, labor, and fringe benefits. We have a fuel truck. Some counties don't have a fuel truck. It's the depreciation of that portion of our fuel islands, which we have 4 relatively new fuel islands in Wapaka County. Each shop was upgraded mostly from below ground storage to above ground storage. We recover those costs by tacking on, I believe it was 40 cents per gallon in 2020 onto every gallon of fuel used. Because we didn't plow a whole lot of snow in 2020, our department burned about 70,000 gallons less of fuel. So if you have 70,000 gallons less fuel used in a year that you can't tack on 40 cents a gallon, you're under recovering just because you were set up to supply, you were ready to go, but no one was buying the fuel, to include ourselves. We buy our own fuel, and we have to try to break even in every one of these cost pools. And if we don't, we take a loss. The under recovery of fuel handling gets billed back to our shop operations, and if we over recover, which sometimes we burn a lot of fuel, we over recover, and that helps our shop operations costs. So our fuel handling, you end up gonna see that on page 15. The next cost pool we can go into is our shop operations. The cost pool of shop operations accumulates all the costs of the highway repair and maintenance shop. We have a beautiful facility, and now we have to account for the costs of having that, including the equipment that's inside of it. So it gets a little bit more complex when you're talking about the workflow on the expenses offset by revenues. You take the direct labor of our mechanics, their costs, and it's offset by the work orders generated when they're fixing pieces of equipment. Usually these balance out at the end of the year. Then our other shop operations costs are the indirect labor, such as the foreman, the parts and receiving specialist, shop supplies, depreciation of shop equipment. That was a big one with the new facility. Any purchasing of new shop tools, and then also that buildings and grounds allocation of having a shop, the depreciation portion of it. Then that gets, you have to subtract out the allocation offsets of the shop overhead recovered from others. That's where we invoice the sheriff's department. They help us have a shop, as we have a big work bay for the sheriff's department. So we invoice them for the direct labor. Divided, or it's the total direct labor divided by the shop overhead costs that were allocated. Anyway, it spits out a shop overhead rate, and it skyrocketed from 2019 to 2020. And so the direct labor of having a shop was $375,000 in 2020. Then you add on the fringe benefits of having those mechanics, you're looking at about $600,000 in value. The direct materials are usually offset by the equipment paying for the materials, mufflers, tires. Then you look at the indirect labor, you add on the fringe benefits, the shop supplies, you're going way down into the bottom, way down here. And it calculates the rate of roughly 140%. So say for instance, we have $100,000 worth of direct labor performed on the sheriff's department. We tack on to that $100,000 a rate of 140% of it. So they're almost paying double to help us offset the cost of having a work base specifically for the sheriff's department. If they weren't helping us for that, offsetting them costs, we would absorb them out of our highway operations. So one way or another, the county's got to pay for it or account for it. Here's an average of our shop operations, or the average costs of it. Next cost pool we have is our pit and quarries. We once were overseeing the Teal pit. We no longer are overseeing that. We also are accountable for the Collier pit, which is not too far out of north of New London off of County Highway T. And we have the expenses of reclaiming these pits once we open them up. So how do we, once we have a pit for getting rid of road building material or stumps or brush, or we needed sand, we need to recover those costs of having a pit. And we do that by charging the price per ton of sand that we sell to our townships when we put it on the roads for winter. So we set a rate for price per ton for the sand. In the bottom left, you can see in 2020, we recovered $115,000. There was a 5-year average of recovering about $243,000, but it didn't snow, so we didn't recover a lot of those costs. Down at the bottom left, way bottom left, it shows whether we had a gain or a loss in our pit and quarry cost pool. We had a significant loss in 2020. And if we under recover in this cost pool, it's absorbed by our unassigned fund balance or our operations fund. The next cost pool I am going to talk about is our bituminous asphalt paving, our patching cost pool. It functions almost similar to the salt sand or the pits. They pretty much offset each other every year, but we're doing real good in our asphalt paving operations. What it is comprised of is all the expenses or the costs associated with having a bituminous operation, including the transferring of material, making patch mix, permits. We're not so much involved in permits anymore with asphalt now that we're out of the Teal pit. And then the buildings and grounds allocation of small areas for holding patch mix. We recover it by setting a price per ton of our asphalt. So over here to the right, you can see asphalt prices increase and decrease, and there's a variety of different asphalt mix and different costs that go with each different type of surface or binder, or whether it's a light traffic, medium traffic, heavy traffic. But we set a rate, a price per ton that we're going to charge our customers, so that in the spring, typically when we put out estimates for townships or municipalities, they know what it's going to be right from the start. So the price of asphalt did go down some here in the year 2021. And so it reduced our rate because we found that we were recovering our costs in this cost pool. So we were able to reduce it. Way in the bottom left, it shows whether we had a gain or loss in that cost pool. We had a gain of about 64,000, which is kind of the opposite in the pit and quarries cost pool. In the financial statement, you're gonna see that was, I didn't write the page down, page 20. Next, we're going to talk about the salt brining cost pool. So salt brining is new to Wapaka County. We've never had brine making material until it started in 2019. We were always buying our brine from somewhere else, and then we were usually it was Portage County or whoever was able to sell it to us. And then we were bringing it back to Wapaka County and we were spraying on Wapaka County's roads. Well, we just weren't even, Stephen, with any of the other counties that were able to produce brine on their own. We had a new facility. We added a brine making facility, but there's a lot of costs that come with having a brine making facility, especially when we purchased all the brine making material ourselves because we didn't have our own salt or brine only route. Some counties years ago were doing pilot programs with the Wisconsin DOT, and the DOT said, if you have an all brine route, meaning you're not using rock salt, we're going to give you some money to help buy your equipment. And that didn't happen for us because we didn't have an all brine route. We ended up buying all of the stuff ourselves, and it's going to take us a couple years of setting our price per gallon on that salt water to recover our costs because we purchased it all ourselves with little to no help from the DOT because we weren't in a pilot program with an all brine route. We weren't outfitted to do that. Fringe benefits. So fringe benefits. I like fringe benefits. I think all employees like having that, but it comes with a cost. So this would be over on page 22. The cost pool accumulates all the employee benefits and employment taxes for all highway employees. It has its own cost pool. What is it? It's the total labor reported less the time off with pay. What is time off with pay for me or for my employees, which I've got 70 of them? It's their sick leave, vacation, holidays, paid time off, longevity payouts, Social Security, retirement, health insurance, birthday would be a fringe benefit, safety shoes. That's a fringe benefit of being an employee, but it all comes with a cost. And so the total cost plus or minus last year's balance equals whether we under recovered or over recovered. So say for instance, in 2020, we under recovered, we can adjust our fringe benefit rate. We better not show that in Wisconsin Dells. It generates a fringe benefit rate. And so any over recovery is added to the enterprise fund. Under recovery is an expense to that overall, our checkbook. In 2020, there was under recovery of our fringe benefits of $67,787. So you can see the county is absorbing a lot of costs out of these cost pools on our overall checkbook. A lot of it's because we weren't invoicing out as often due to lack of snow. I did not see a lot of change over the summer activities. The summer activities that we performed were about even Steven. A lot of it was primarily winter. Next one is our field small tools cost pool. Kind of a lot smaller cost pool, but it does come with some expenses. What are they? They're all of them small tools, typically less than $5,000, that are used on all projects, and the DOT can't set a specific rate on a shovel or a bucket or a rake or small items that are just generally used all over the place. They're small tools. And so we set a small tools rate to recover the costs of buying all of that. The rate on our invoices in 2020 was 1.7%. 2021, it went up 1 to 1.8%. And if we under recover, we pay for it out of our checkbook. And when you are a not-for-profit organization, your goal is to break even at minimum. Equipment operations. And so our equipment operations is a big part of our costs. So this cost pool accumulates all the costs of operating and maintaining highway facility equipment. The state sets the rate on all of our equipment. We don't really have that luxury. We share all of our expenses and revenues with the state for each different class of equipment. Like a triaxle is different than a dump truck that's got, a quad axle versus my pickup truck versus a bulldozer. So each individual piece of equipment has its own rate set by the DOT. And then we can choose to increase that rate to try to recover our costs. We had it at 5%. In 2021, we moved it up to 8%, and we really are going to start stepping it up a little bit because we've been under recovering in our equipment operations. So it's the revenue generated offset by repairing that equipment. Lets us know if we had a profit or loss. And we got 430 pieces of equipment at the highway department that have a set rate. We took a significant loss in 2020. We were outfitted with 13 plow trucks to plow on the state, 13 on the county, 20 for towns, and they were rarely used. And we're seeing that trend again with these weird winters we're having. If you think about just the spring of 2021, how much it snowed, we've invoiced the town of Wyoming $2,500. That's all that they've charged. We've charged them for plowing snow to plow an entire town this year. So there just isn't. We're hoping to catch up on it on a summer's note where they have this extra money left over and they spend it with us during the summer. So the chart on equipment can get pretty complicated because we have, not complicated, it's just that we have a lot of equipment. On page 10 of the annual report, it shows our equipment operations. We took a loss of $256,122. That loss is covered by our operations fund. So we have to, out of our big checkbook, cover for this. And this is where it's all compiling. Capital purchases, between building a new highway shop, having the equipment we have, the road construction projects that we've taken on since I've been here. I'm absolutely proud of the decisions made by Highway Committee, myself, County Board, building a new facility, our operations manager and patrol superintendent and foreman. I'm very happy with the decisions that they made. So I don't want to go back. One of the things that happened with our capital purchases is our truck fleet was old, and we're trying to rebuild it as best as we can. And we had an opportunity from Washburn County to purchase some used vehicles that were once leased. And so in 2020, we purchased 2 leased vehicles, or Washburn County was leasing them. So we increased our purchase as the opportunity came on a whim. And when things come on a whim to buy stuff, a lot of times you have to take the deal or you lose it. And with us having that opportunity to buy 2 trucks, you might see red ones out there plowing for us now. We've currently have bought in 5 red trucks that were once leased, and we got them for well under half the cost of a new one. So why do we have all of these vehicles? Again, it's for plowing. We maintain 572 lane miles of state highways. We need equipment to maintain our 333 miles of county roads. And just a little note at the bottom, if it doesn't snow, that's 5-6 months of our equipment sitting idle, not generating revenue. And that really, really hurts us, but it's uncontrollable sometimes. All right, let's get out of that chart way to the left that was enterprise, and we're going to move over to that transportation services chart that was over here, more of our yearly budget. One of the things we administer is the 50/50 local bridge aids. That's where the Wapaka County levies for about $53,000 worth of 50/50 bridge aid from our local townships and municipalities. There's only like 3 that don't participate. And then our department, our committee, receives applications for replacements of those culverts. And then let's just say the township replaces one, they pay for all of it up front. And then they send the invoice to us for reimbursement based off of their request. And we pay them up to 50% reimbursement for a 36-inch culvert or larger. The Transportation Services Fund as a whole has different cost pools that make up the fund itself. Think of it more of as a yearly account, routine maintenance. So in routine maintenance, we have 333 miles on our county system. We have to maintain with brushing, trimming, potholes, painting, anything that culvert replacements. That's where a lot of our money is spent for just maintaining what we have. Overseen a lot more by our operations manager and our foreman. Our budget in 2020 was 2.1 million. Our expenses were just under 2 million. So we didn't spend about $117,000 of that. So please remember that number, not specifically, but go into winter now, winter maintenance, its own cost pool. Our budget was $1,052,000 to plow our county system. We only spent $718,000 of it. So that was a big reduction on revenue that we charge ourselves. Just alone in our winter maintenance cost pool in 2020, from January to June, winter maintenance took a hit of $556,000. But at the end of the year, we only charged our county plowing system $161,000. So it really started to show that there was a trend occurring with Mother Nature. Another cost pool we have is marking and signing. That's maintaining all of our county-owned signs. We have a budget of $215,000. Our expenses were $185,000. A lot of these budgets here are also to pay the employees' wages come out of here. So that's why they add up. It isn't $285,000 worth of signs or whatever. That's to pay for the employee to be here as well, for those working in that department. Same with our bridge maintenance cost pool. Here we had overspent about $50,000. We had more bridge maintenance on our county system than what we had budgeted for. Plus we added a project in New London with polymer deck overlays. We have costs of maintaining our salt sheds. We have to recover those costs. That's kind of overseen by our buildings and fleet manager, Mark Korth. New to Wapaka County is the Wetland Mitigation Bank. I'm hoping that this is a source of revenue that only leads us in the right direction. And so this book right here, if you can recall Lakeview Manor, all of the surrounding farm fields around it, we've made the determination with Dave Johnson and Highway Committee and different levels that we're going to create a wetland mitigation bank with all of the property that surrounds Lakeview Manor. And what does that mean? It means that we're going to create roughly 198. It's a 253 acre site, which we can have about 190 credits available for wetland mitigation disturbances that fall within the Fox River watershed. Going on the DNR's website, it explains it to a T pretty much, but we're going to have the largest wetland mitigation bank site in Wapaka County in the state of Wisconsin to sell credits. So in Neenah or Oshkosh or anywhere that falls within the Fox River watershed, they widen a road or they disturb a stream or a tamarack swamp, whatever disturbance was occurred, they have to buy credits out of a wetland mitigation bank to offset those costs or to offset those disturbed wetlands. And we're going to have the bank to be selling them. So you're looking anywhere from $70,000 to $100,000 per credit. Knock on wood, if everything goes good over the next 10, 15 years, that site in wetland mitigation sale of the credits is going to be somewhere $15, $18 million to us. That's to Wapaka County, not highway, but to Wapaka County. So from there, it's going to help offset some of the costs for construction, we hope, or asphalt repavement projects. Next, we'll move into our year-end allocations. At the close of the year, we have to make adjustments to our books. Let's say that throughout the year, the inventory doesn't match the book value. And so we've been budgeting quite a bit of money every year for allocations, 237,000 in 2020. We're down there at 210,000. So there's about $27,000 that we did not spend to balance our books. Kind of recouping that big chart off to the right on our yearly budget. Our 5-year average has been underspent on county maintenance and winter maintenance and routine maintenance, all of our transportation services stuff. But in 2020, we took a big hit of $440,000 we didn't take a hit. We just didn't spend $440,000 in providing maintenance to our county trunk system because we were holding on to a lot of it for plowing snow, which it just didn't occur. So we did all right. Road construction is another big expense to our department. Wapaka County has a goal to reconstruct 2 to 3 miles a year. Plus we want to pulverize and repave about 11, 12, 13 miles a year. That all comes with the costs. Our budget in 2020 was 5.6 million. It says that our expenses was 6.2 million. So we overran our budget about $600,000 in road construction. We overspent by $641,000. And so some of that was planned because we didn't spend it in maintenance. So we spent some of it in, we put more money into road construction. So that kind of helped offset it a little bit. We could talk forever about road construction. We have a lot of road projects that are going on. These ones are all open in our books. Or this is a reflection of the last 5 years, but we're trying to put both mats of asphalt on our roads right away so we can close out all these open projects and make our list a lot shorter. A summary of our transportation services. Unspent average is about $434,000. We overspent in 2020 about $210,000 with anyway, what does all this mean? I mean, it's a long hour-long presentation or 45-minute long presentation. When it comes down to it, how did we end up? And so we probably could take this PBM funds and put them down low, but we started with $3.9 million. That was the revenue that we had to spend, or that was our checkbook balance. And at the end of the year, we took a loss on income statements of about $416,000. We had a net capital investment of $603,000. So that's a little over $1 million, offset by some of our PBM funds, which is a whole nother program, performance-based maintenance on the state. We had a decrease in our overall highway operations funds of about $932,000. And that's a trend that was starting up here in depreciation and capital purchases and road construction over the years has taken our budget, our balance, and it's eaten it. And we need to get that curve or that trend to turn and start coming back up, or at least plane off, because we aren't going to be able to sustain what we're doing at the rate we're going. Where did we end up in our transportation services fund? At the beginning of the year, we had our revenues, $1.5 million. Our tax levy helps offset our transportation services fund. The DOT gives us about $2.2 million to maintain our county system. There is some transfer from the general fund. A lot of that's for road construction because we're not borrowing for road construction anymore. And then the expenses that offset those services are routine maintenance, winter maintenance, all of them cost pools we talked about in transportation services. Our ending balance at the end of the year was about $68,000 to the red. So we overspent in transportation services about $68,000. That gets absorbed by this other big checkbook cost pool over here to the left. So where do we go from here? What changes do we need to make, or are there any changes to make? And so quarterly approaches. Given Highway Committee up to speed, up-to-date reports on where we're sitting financially. So if they're sitting in a Highway Committee meeting and asked if they should spend $390,000 on leased equipment, maybe it isn't the best choice based off of having all of our data updated at least quarterly. Sheriff's Department was sent their big overhead rate at the end of the year. We're doing that monthly now so that they can watch their books and they don't get hit with a $86,000 bill at the end of the year for all of the direct labor shop overhead rate on their direct labor. At the end of the year, they get it monthly. We can adjust our fuel handling rate to try, and our asphalt rates and our brine rates to try to recover some costs. A lot of it's to recover the cost of the depreciation of a new facility and lack of revenue on our equipment. quicker turnaround. We need to do that a little bit. So every month we're invoicing our customers versus waiting 6 weeks or sometimes holding an invoice back. So we're going to try to invoice our customers as quick as we possibly can, which that's a whole process in itself. From the invoice gets generated, it then goes to the foreman for review. It then goes to the operations manager for review. It goes to outlying shops. It comes back in a pickup truck. Now we're having the foreman sit right in the shop and go through it so that it's almost 2 days, 3 days, and they should have the invoices back for the towns to get it sent out to versus weeks. Minimize the major repairs as we can control them and expenses for 2021. Planning for 2022 it's going to help us. This slideshow and understanding on how all these things affect each other is going to be easier for planning, I think, not only for me, but for our whole staff. And then we need to take a closer look at the level of services that Wapaka County provides to its municipalities. So think about it in a sense that a business, let's just say Jill's business, has 20 plow operators and 20 trucks ready to service the towns, and no one hires you. Well, is Jill going to keep those around much longer? Or what do we need to do as far as recouping those costs of having all of them employees and trucks ready to service in a slow winter? Maybe it goes along with just being a public service provider, but the demand is there to increase our fleet and people to serve the towns. And we just can't afford to do so without making some changes. A lot of what I talked about today is referenced on the Wisconsin DOT's website, and they have a uniform cost manual that references all the different things that primarily Chris and Jan and Mark Korth, a little bit of Larry, they can look and see how, hey, we want to talk about fuel handling and how can we generate more money, or should this cost of replacing the fuel handling go here or not? So that kind of concludes the financial review of where we're at. We took a pretty good hit when it didn't snow. I'm not singing, someone's singing. That's so any questions? Which music, Gary? It's detailed.
Once we get our entertainment. Was that for me, Jerry?
Yeah.
Oh,
I have a question.
yes.
Are all of your people that plow the snow, are they all full-time employees, or are they laid off if you have an easy winter?
Yep, all of our employees are full-time employees with fringe benefits.
Okay.
Yes, Supervisor Craig.
My question deals with, I know that we as a county provide the state highways that we take care of. Have they increased funding for, she said, how do we get rid of those little bumps that have occurred on the highways that haven't been taken care of in a while?
So the little bumps on the roads are all part of Biden's infrastructure plan to try to get more money to the states to get the roads to ride nicer, you mean? Yes.
Oh, just so you're not humping over them summer and winter and summer and winter.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, they've taken an approach with the lack of funding to mill and fill a lot of the roads. So where you live on Highway 54, instead of pulverizing it, they're milling it off and they're putting a new surface on it. But you do see a lot of reflective cracking. Them cracks on that bottom lift, they do come up through the surface within a year or two, and then you still hit them. That's above me on how we want to, if on our county system, I don't believe in that. But at some point, that's all we're going to be able to afford. And so unless something happens on our budget to give us more funding for our road projects, we're probably going to have to go to more of a maintenance approach. I don't know. I know, Bernie, you work for Northeast. That's becoming more and more common with mill and fills on the state system. And so that trend is just a lot cheaper way to keep dust control down. There's no detours. There's no grading of the gravel underneath it to fix it. It's just mill down 2 inches, recycle that top 2 inches, and then repave it back down on top. But the cracking that occurs after that is part of that decision.
It just seems to me that a couple of years ago, your highway department was out there grinding off those spots that had lifted. And now they've been there the last year or so with nothing ever happening. And I'm thinking some of them are pretty serious, but
Yeah.
evidently not serious enough that the state's willing to pay for you to take them down.
Right, we have a DOT legman that has his hierarchy of chiefs above him that make those decisions on what work we can perform on the state. And we're under, not a microscope, but they only have a limited budget, which I'm trying to keep my guys as chargeable to that as possible. And then they make the decisions on letting Greg or Hank know what our guys can do or cannot do out in the state system. We definitely make a lot of recommendations on what needs adjustments or needs repairs. And then they say yes or no.
So who is the person that a citizen would write to say, hey, let's get this fixed? The guy above you. in other words.
Yeah, so if it was State Highway 110, I've sent multiple letters to Representative Peterson.
Okay.
And then he doesn't know what's going on at that moment. So then he'll talk to the Tegan Griffin, who's the Wisconsin DOT's Transportation Communications Officer. And then she reaches out to all of the department chiefs at the DOT. So you can start with your.
Todd Neiman's email. Pat, not to change the subject, but there's concrete underneath there that just keeps heaving up that they won't take care of. So I can get you his email and you can email him. I doubt they're gonna do much because otherwise they start milling off all the blacktop. Now there's nothing left. And I think you're gonna have a worse issue, but that's what's going on.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
Pat, if you want to see how bad it is, go drive 110 up near Marion.
Oh, I know how
It's like
bad it
gravel
is,
compared to 54. 54 and 22 are wonderful in comparison to some of the other state roads in our county.
Highway 10 is off. 110 is off. Okay.
What are we reimbursed when our county staff are called out to accident scenes?
So a county accident generates a sheriff's department accident report. And that accident report is typically tied to an insurance claim. And so we charge our employees rate, their hourly rate plus fringe benefits. And if it's on a Saturday or a Sunday, it's time and a half of that employee that responded to that vehicle or to that accident. Typically reclaimed through that insurance claim. Now, some people that don't have insurance, we have the authority to go ahead and make recommendations to suspend their license until they pay our invoice from the DOT. We don't do that very often, but since I've been here, I've seen maybe 3 or 4 where guardrails just got obliterated and we had to fix them. There was no insurance to charge our time to fixing them. And so then we can go through and suspend their license. Make recommendations to levels above us, the courts, to suspend them.
And then if your crew cleans up, like for a record service, do you charge them through the insurance, through the record service? Or?
So the record service is also chargeable to that insurance claim or that accident. And so you've got responding businesses, record service, highway department. We're all invoicing through that insurance claim.
But you do get reimbursed.
For most of them, we've received them, yeah. Very few we don't. We try to put them on payment plans, like say, for instance, a lady's driving someone else's vehicle and smashes it. Well, yeah, it becomes very complicated and we set up payment plans for them people to make payments to us to try to pay off the damage of repairing that guardrail or not so much signs. Usually signs are runaways and we don't know who they were.
Talking about signs, Casey, you once told me or told us how many signs in Wapaka County that we have to take care of?
Our sign department oversees a lot on our state, county, and towns hire us to maintain a lot of their signs. And it's pushing low 30,000, little over 28,000 signs are on our Simple Signs program, which
that's amazing.
More townships are, I think Royalton just talked about having us do a lot of sign replacements for them. So that number increases and it decreases based off of the town's decisions to go with us or not. But once they get involved in our Simple Signs program, then we monitor and regulate when that sign is new, when it's been replaced. Our guys go and do the fixing on it. I think the town of Wapaka is doing the same here soon.
Casey, before you finish here, could you introduce you got really a good highway commission led by Mr. McClone. Could you introduce them?
My highway committee, yes, chaired by Chairman Joe McClone, vice chaired by Mr. Lee Muck. Also members on it are Jim Nygaard and Fred Zog, who was here not long ago. He's seen the presentation multiple times. And then we've got Mr. Dick Rowan. Where's Dick? Way in the back. And so taking this opportunity, I was called by Joan Fleece yesterday. She asked me to tell everyone that is on my highway committee on the county board that Bob truly loved highways. So with that, she wanted me to take the first opportunity I had to thank the highway committee members for giving them a successful career. So that kind of concludes where I'm at.
Okay, thank you so much, Casey. Very good stuff.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't have hardly anything for the monthly report. You'd be glad to hear, but again, I will read this card from the Fleeces. Really a nice picture of Bob near his school bus. And we find comfort, strength, and peace just knowing others care. Thank you for your thoughtfulness, the family of Bob Fleece. Bob really enjoyed being on the county board. Thank you for the flowers. I just have to say, Bob was here over 30 years, I believe, on the county board, and certainly a mentor of many of us, including me. And he was kind of a silent leader. Whatever he was ahead of, it got done very well. So we'll certainly miss Bob. That's as his family will. I was just looking recently, since when I joined the county board, I think there are 13 of us that have passed. And it's increasing pretty fast, it seems. So that's a lot. So that's all I have. I was glad to see Mr. Frenetten here. He left now, but it's kind of funny. I was sitting at 4 o'clock mass on a Saturday, and their priest got off the altar and he says, Ted Frenetten said to say hello. I'm at the courthouse. He's at the courthouse, but I get a hello from him in church. The Frenettens and Father Tim are priests. They're really close. They're close families together. Appointments. Jill?
We have a reappointment of Judy Olson as a citizen member for the Health and Human Services Department Board for a 3-year term.
Gerald Murphy made a motion to approve. And Mr. Spearings seconded the motion. Any remarks, questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion's carried.
We also have a reappointment of Jim Gazer for the Veteran Service Commission for a term ending November 2023.
I know I saw, I saw a finger up, but I didn't know you were. Okay.
That was the right figure.
And motion by Lair and a second by Greg. Be careful. Be careful. Any questions regarding that? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Okay, announcements, City of Wapaka Ordinance number 03-2021, amendment to the year 2030 comprehensive plan. And of course, the WCDC monthly report was in your packet. And the next, we need a motion to adjourn.
Muck so moves.
Muck made the motion to adjourn. And I guess we are adjourned. Don't need a second. And that's undebatable.
Undebatable.